Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory, prices, and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I am Evan Irwin, and we start each Top 10 by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hello.
Reuben Bressler.
Hey, y'all.
Hey. What's going on, everybody? Poop.
Sometimes starts the show with a foreign language, so I thought I would go with the equivalent that I could replicate.
Southern isn't a foreign language.
It might as well be. Let's face it.
Certain dialects qualify.
Dialects.
Okay, dialect is a good one. I'm gonna have to start venturing off into the East Coast of used peoples. Yeah.
Some Ewans.
It's Yuns.
Yuns.
All Ovians. That's right. All Ovians.
Yuns.
Friggin' all Ovians. Yeah, anyway, what it is. So we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Reuben will tell us who was the most prolific and letting us know what card we didn't choose as one of our top 10 Orzhov cards. And this one in particular actually encourages you, the listener out there, or the viewer, that you have another spot where you can leave comments and we can take a look at them. Reuben?
Yeah, this is my first time. I mean, I've been checking the subreddit, on the various episodes just in case something had popped up. And this is the first time that a winner is actually on the subreddit. Cabbage Squirrel is this week's winner, who left the comment, "You guys forgot about the original Orzhov card, Selenia, Dark Angel from Tempest. As a card, she is not much to write about, but the lore she played, a small but pivotal role that catapulted events into their bloody conclusion, R.I.P. Miri. This is not why I find Selenia to be a great card, however. I first saw her in 1997 on the bus, bound for my grandparents' house, on the card Whispers of the Muse. I was 12 at the time and couldn't wait the 2-hour trip to crack open my starter deck. Beautiful art by the late and great Quentin Hoover. I wondered who this Selenia was. I wanted to know more about everything in Magic, especially the story. 20 years later, I still do."
Yeah.
That's just a beautiful comment, and nice little story in there. Selenia Dark Angel, a super important role in the story of the Weatherlight crew and the Wrath cycle. Just a fabulous comment from our subreddit.
So, for those who don't know, Selenia Dark Angel is a 5-mana, 3/3 flying rare angel from Tempest. She's a black, a white, and 3 generic mana. She has, of course, flying as mentioned, and pay 2 life : return her to its owner's hand.
Yeah. So 3/3 flyer for 5 is a decent rate. We get lots of, Spire monitors and various other sundries with those stats. Mm-hmm. But the ability to protect herself, and at the cost of not any amount of mana but life, which is a resource that you typically have a lot of in black and white, with lifelink abilities and things like that, it was super interesting, and another fun way to. This was back in the day when that wasn't a thing that you completely had sorted out. This was 97, remember? I mean, Necro Winter had happened, so you exchanged life for cards, but this was a different way to exchange life for cards in being able to block and return to your hand. Remember, damage on the stack existed as well. So lots of interesting things going on with Selenia outside of the fact that she's also a central character in one of the main story arcs.
And a very unique character, too. If I remember correctly, she was sort of a literal guardian angel for, like, Krovax's family, and had been in the family, and somehow ended up on Volrath's side, and she ended up being destroyed in the conflict, which essentially broke Krovax, and he turned into Krovax the Cursed. But she was really the catalyst for that. Krovax sort of being this kind of meh, character in the background, and all of a sudden, this thing that means so much to him, has to be eliminated, and he just can't deal with it. And then that led to Miri being killed by Krovax, and then Krovax, is essentially becoming a bigger character in the storyline. And that was a very unique thing to do.
Absolutely.
Super sweet comment. Thank you very much, Cabbage Squirrel.
Thank you.
Bonus points for the username there.
Bonus points for username.
Yeah.
No bonus award for the username, but bonus points.
No.
But like Reuben said, though, there are many ways to let us know about your honorable mentions. You can do the YouTubes, you can do the Reddits. We've even seen, now with the new Twitter limit, I've seen some great 280 character analyses of our cards. And so any way you can reach us, we're happy to consider that feedback.
Yeah, so let this officially be the notice that, if there's a social channel that we are active on, feel free to hit us up on those channels. Give me a message on Reddit if possible. Cabbage Squirrel to Mr. Orange, M-I-S-T-E-R Orange. That is my Reddit account. And I will get you your super cool $50 gift certificate thanks to CoolStuffInc.com. And as always, at the end of this episode, we want to talk about we want you to talk about what we didn't mention as your honorable mention. But we'll cover that again later. All right, so let's get moving here to number 10. Reuben, what you got for number 10?
I'm going to kick things off with one of the biggest, if not the biggest, thing in the set. Ghalta Primal Hunter is my number 10 Rivals of Ixalan card. It's an legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur. 10 colorless, green, 12/12.
Woo.
Trample. That's a lot of numbers. But it also costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. This is part of the cycle of the Elder Dinosaurs, of which there are 6 in the set, keep in mind. And I would not be surprised to see a few more of them later on in the top 10s from some of my compatriots. But this one is the one that excites me the most. Ghalta Primal Hunter, I believe, is the buy box promo, if I'm correct, or it's a game day promo. There's a full art version with different art. And this card actually is exciting for Standard. A lot of folks have been testing it and say that this could theoretically be the real deal in constructed formats. There's plenty of ways to play a turn 2 dinosaur mana dork like Drover of the Mighty, play a turn 3 Ripjaw Raptor, and then turn 4 you can play this thing. You can play a Scrounger on turn 2 and a Ronus on turn 3 and play this on turn 4 as well. There's lots of ways to power this thing out super quick with Regisar Alpha, various other haste granters as well. I just think that Ghalta Primal Hunter is a super exciting design. It's super interesting, and it's my favorite of the Elder Dinosaurs.
They also printed the 3-mana 5/5, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the 3-mana 5/5 with Ascend that allows you to play an extra land on each of your turns. It's another exciting inclusion that could possibly help power this guy out.
If only Ghalta cost 1 less for each potato, you would have that out on like turn 2.
Oh, bother.
Yeah, there was some taters in that one. It's okay. We harvest taters here.
My friend Chantel, I believe it was Chantel, had posted from the pre-release that she was able to get Ghalta out very early and that it was not difficult at all to assemble the circumstances needed to cheat them out. And I think it's great. And we all know how cost reduction effects go. Where it's like, what could go wrong? And then before you know it, we're dealing with big dinosaurs we can't handle.
I mean, cost reduction has never, bit Wizards in the butt or anything.
Right.
Never actually goes wrong.
If you're gonna put a cost reduction on stuff, this is a fairly safe way to do it. I mean, this kind of reminds me a little bit of Phyrexian Dreadnought, whereas instead of sacrificing that much power, you just need that much power.
Sure.
And it's a 12/12 trampler that's real cheap. So, and Dreadnought is playable in older formats, and certainly we've seen Stifle Knot in the past, but it's not broken.
No.
So
Right.
I don't think that this would be acceptable.
Ideally, it's good. Apparently, at least based on the card here, it's from the store championships. I'm not sure if that's the top 8 or whatnot.
Yeah, I think the top 8 gets a Silver Gill Adept, and then the winner or top 4 get the Ghalta.
Nice. Fair enough. Aaron, what is your number 10?
I will be playing the role of Reuben Wrestler this week, and my number 10 is higher on someone else's list.
Wow.
How dare you? Unbelievable.
Well, I mean, if you're going to have it, right, just get it out of the way.
That's chicanerous and deceitful of you to suggest that I'm... All right.
Well, for my number 10, sometimes it's all about the value. Sometimes it's all about the efficiency. Because at the end of the day, I'm both Timmy and a Spike. I'd like crazy fun stuff, but you got to make it as cheap as possible. That's the rule. And we actually got to see this in action at the pre-release. And this card was as bananas as we had thought it was, which is Trapjaw Tyrant. Trapjaw Tyrant is a 5-mana 5/5, 2 white, 3 generic mana for a 5/5 mythic dinosaur that has Enrage. Whenever it is dealt damage, exile target creature an opponent controls until Trapjaw Tyrant leaves the battlefield. Now, this thing's got it coming going. No one wants to block this thing. It basically has unblockable on it, unless they're guaranteed to kill it in some way. And usually they have to be super, super, positive, because if you have a combat trick, it's over. Like, just GG. Able to rile this guy is amazing. Anything that lets you deal 1 damage to it in some fashion is incredible. And it was fantastic at the pre-release, as expected. And I'm glad to see, just sometimes it's just 5-mana 5/5, awesome abilities that does great stuff. Go dinosaurs.
Yeah, this card's super cool. I mean, 5/5 for 5 is already ridiculous. 4 toughness seems to be a good line. A lot of the effects from Rivals of Ixalan deal 4 damage, and this card interacts really interestingly in combat. You basically, it can't really die in combat to a lot of the combat tricks. A first striker allows you to trigger this thing before damage gets dealt, which is super interesting. This thing tangles with Zatalpa and wins, which is kind of difficult to do, as the first strike damage goes on the stack and then you exile it. Doesn't die to Glorybringer. There's a ton of great things about this card. I really enjoy it quite a bit.
It's super cool, and sometimes you just need your dinosaurs to be amazing, and this one is amazing. Let's move on here to number 9. Aaron, do you have one of those?
I do have a number 9. My number 9 is a card that I also had to tangle with at the pre-release, and I was very impressed with this card. I admit going into it, I didn't think very much of it, but our second round opponent, I was playing 2-Headed Giant. We faced a very lovely couple, and one half of the duo had this, and it was really great for filtering, and I was really anxious to see what would happen if the card flipped over, and it got scary very quickly. My number 9 is Azor's Gateway. So Azor's Gateway is 2 colorless. It's a legendary artifact. You can pay 1 colorless and tap it to draw a card. Then you exile a card from your hand. If cards of 5 or more different converted mana costs are exiled with Azor's Gateway, you gain 5 life, untap it, and transform it, and it becomes Sanctum of the Sun. Where you just tap it and add an X mana of any 1 color to your mana pool, where X is your life total. For those playing along at home, with 2-Headed Giant, you start at 30 life. Yeah. So, here's the kicker. So they had this, and then they also had 2 of that little red girl that makes elementals. So they were like, geez. So they were like, so we're going to make 19 mana, and we're going to dump it all into her. And I was like, and the boyfriend is just like, thanks for the games.
It's been real. It's been super fun.
It's been real. And so I was really impressed with the filtering, especially in a limited environment where you really, really want to be hitting all your land drops. And so this was really, really great. The filtering is not to be underestimated. And then if you do get it to flip, you're gaining 5 life, which I can see as kind of shining in more of like a mid-range or a control shell, where you're bound to not be doing much. You're just sort of setting up your game plan. You might be taking some damage, but to send you back to 5 life and then to flip you over and to have all that mana at your disposal, the possibilities are really endless what you can do with that. And so I think it's a really great flavor win that this is the thing that, Azor is presumed to be hiding behind. It's not difficult to flip. And I was very, very impressed with this card, where I was just like, Jesus.
The rate's really interesting. It's also worded very interestingly that you get to draw the card before you have to exile. It doesn't say non-land, so one of the first things you can get rid of is a land, which has converted mana cost of 0. So basically at that point you need to get rid of 4 spells. So 4 spells that you don't need, spells you have extra copies of. I could see this, and I've seen some rumbles about this card a little bit already, where I think maybe Approach with the Second Sun decks would want something like this, or maybe it's great in the mirror, for example, to be able to get you back to yours faster. It's able to draw you, Approach with the Second Sun even faster. This card has, like, when I first saw it, I thought this was like stupid, goofy, whatever. But like the longer I've looked at it and heard people talk about it, the scarier this card gets.
Yeah. You get to play a lot of corner case cards in your control deck with Azor's Gateway of having, Celestial Purges and Flash Freezes and access to, things that are really, really good in 20% of games, but then, you draw your Wrath of God against the other control deck, and then you just put it under the Azor's Gateway. Really interesting design, really fun design, quick to get out, only costs 2. Not quick to trigger, of course. You need 5 cards underneath of it, but it gains you the 5 life, and then you immediately get access to just 1 billion mana, which is super exciting.
Yeah, I'm really curious, sort of what you would power out with this. What's the payoff for turning? I mean, like, you filtered 5 cards really quickly. That's awesome. You gain some life. That's sweet. But like, I feel like there's an extra like 1-2 punch of something, whatever that something may be. All right, so let's move on here to number 9 for you, Reuben.
So we have a bunch of the flip enchantments. These are the enemy color flip enchantments as opposed to the first set where we had things like Growing Rights of Itlamok and the monocolors. Now we have these enemy color flip enchantments, and the one that I've decided to choose is one that, Evan, you and I were really confused by early on, and at the pre-release we got the story behind it. And because I really enjoyed the flavor of it once it was explained to me, I wanted to explain it as well. And so my number 9 is Path of Metal, which is a legendary enchantment, rare from Ixalan that costs red and a white. When Path of Metal enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature that doesn't have First Strike, Double Strike, Vigilance, or Haste. And whenever you attack with at least 2 creatures that have First Strike, Double Strike, Vigilance, and or Haste, transform Path of Metal into Metzali Tower of Triumph, which has 3 abilities, one of which is tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Pay a colorless a red and tap. Metzali Tower of Triumph deals 2 damage to each opponent. And 2 colorless a white and tap. Choose a creature at random that attacked this turn. Destroy that creature. So the flavor, as it was explained to us by Melissa DeTora when she was communicating with Ben Hayes at Wizards of the Coast, is that the Path of Metal is sort of like a trapped hallway that you're trying to get through, a Dungeons and Dragons style trapped dungeon. And then once you emerged from the top of the tower, you then are starting to play a tower defense kind of game. You've arrived at the end of your Path of Metal, and now you have to protect yourself. And that sort of is exemplified by the white ability as well as the red ability being able to finish opponents off without targeting them. This one is probably the one that I think also of the flip enchantments has the greatest chance of having effects on standard. It is the cheapest. It interacts very well with a lot of creatures. For example, Adorned Pouncer survives, Bomat Courier survives, Earthshaker Kenra survives. All of the Oketra's Monument tokens survive and also help trigger the flip side. So you can keep attacking with your little tiny 1/1s, and then you're able to finish them off without worrying about their one gigantic attacker that's coming back at you on the swing back, or you're able to target them for 2 damage every turn without targeting. So even if they have a Ley Line of Sanctity or True Believer effect in play, you're able to continuously deal them direct damage. Path of Metal is just a really interesting design. I really like the flavor behind it, and it's a ton of fun.
I love the flavor, but this card is weird.
It's super weird.
It's super duper weird. Even like as I know, it's kind of like the third act of Indiana Jones and Last Crusade. Like, you know, he's rolling through the blades and like he's dodging the arrows and stuff. And for what it's worth, that's really cool. And I think that flavor comes through in that, like, if your creatures can do this, they're going to make it up through the path. That's pretty sweet. Anything that says choose a creature at random that attacked and destroy it
is weird for sure.
It's just it's Hearthstone-y, and one of the things I don't like about Hearthstone is the incredible amount of randomness, and this is just like we're going, you know, dive in. Where again, flavor wise, you're at the top of the tower. You're shooting people, and like they're trying to go up the tower, and you're like, you die, blah. But it's weird because like the deck that wants this doesn't want to use that white ability, like ever.
Right.
Like if you use that white ability,
ignore the white ability. Ignore it.
Yeah, but then you have to play.
Pretend it doesn't exist. It's just direct damage. It's just a Shivan Gorge.
It's just a Shivan Gorge.
Oh. Yeah, sure, why not?
Hey, buddy. I mean, more power to you.
You're also able to trigger, if you're able to trigger your Trapjaw Tyrants in your Red-White Dinos deck, you're able to do a lot of other cool things with Path of Metal. I just think it's a really cool design. And actually, of the flip lands, I think it's the one that's most likely to get there in Standard.
Wow. I don't know if I would join you on that one. But either way, I like the card. I think it's really cool. And it also is nice, you know, to kind of be in a position where you're hanging out with R&D and you're like, the weird.
Tell me the story of this card. We were super confused by this and be like, Melissa, you need to write somebody and tell us what the hell is going on with this card.
Mark Rosewater, please, now. Yeah. You know, hands the phone over. All right, so my number 9 is very similar in that it is a really cool design. Part of my favorite cards type thing is I enjoy seeing really interesting designs that I wasn't prepared for. And this is another flip card, and we did see it at the pre-release a few times in different ways. But it's just really strange because Golden Guardian is a 4 generic mana rare 4/4 golem. So a 4 mana 4/4 golem, awesome, with defender. Oops, can't attack with it. Okay, but 2 mana colon, and pay real close attention with how this thing is worded, okay? Golden Guardian fights another target creature you control. When Golden Guardian dies this turn, return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. Now note, it doesn't have to die in that fight. It just has to fight something. That ability has to resolve, so there has to be a creature there to fight at the end of it. And if you were to kill it yourself, or if something else were to kill it because you're blocking or whatever, that's a thing. Remember, 2 mana colon, you can activate this as much as you want. It transforms into Gold Forge Garrison, which is a land that taps for 2 mana of any one color to your mana pool, and 4 generic mana tap colon, create a 4/4 colorless golem artifact creature token. This makes its own army. Interestingly, you could fight another copy of itself in order to turn it into a Gold Forge gear. So there's a whole bunch of ways where this card is really cool, and while it is on curve in terms of, its convert mana cost is its power and toughness, and that's fantastic. Being able to just essentially make 4/4s is really scary, and I love that aspect of this card.
Yeah, this card looks super powerful. I had Fitz playing against Kathleen's deck with this card, and it also popped up at my pre-release again, being able to trigger Enrage, and also being able to just get it off on a Death Toucher is really a quick and easy way to flip this into the backside, which allows you to have a 4/4 every turn. It's just an unbeatable Bitter Blossom. Thing is ridiculous. Unbeatable Bitter Blossom.
Unbeatable Bitter Blossom. All right.
It makes lots of huge body creatures every turn. It's a very difficult thing to interact with.
I like this card a lot. All right. Move on here to number 8. Aaron, what you got for number 8?
My number 8 is a card that I have sung the praises of on more than one of our shows. I'm so excited about this card. My excitement for this card has been stoked by Mr. Abe Sargent, who writes for Gathering Magic. He posted an article today with a commander deck featuring this individual as the commander. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not this card is good enough to be a commander of a deck. There's no words fail me.
Hey, any legendary creature can be a good enough commander if you want it to be.
Well, there's no debating that this card is good in a commander deck. There's just been some discussion as to whether or not it's meant to be the focus of it, the thing you build. And Abe really wanted to prove that you can, in fact, do it. And so I'm excited for this. I just can't. I look at this card, and the art just takes me out of the game. My number 8 is Alenda the Dusk Rose. Just look at her. Just look at this card. Beautiful, beautiful. So she's 2 a white and a black. She's a legendary creature, Vampire Knight, 1/1, with lifelink. Whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Alenda the Dusk Rose. When Alenda dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Alenda's power. So she's basically the bad mamma jamma of the vampires, and she's essentially a pinata of sorts. And this is something we're actually seeing on a lot of the vampires and rivals. This sort of, when they die, you either gain life or you get extra creatures, and that's really, really cool. And so there's been a lot of talk about this card, especially in Standard. Yahenni's been kind of waiting in the wings, and Yahenni is a vampire. And so kind of having a vampire aristocrat engine and just sort of pumping Alenda up could really, really get out of hand. This was something that Abe talked about in his article. If you get a chance, go to Gathering Magic. His deck is really sweet. And he basically talks about how there's 3 ways you can win with Alenda. You can either go kind of the Voltron route with her, just let her lay back, get very, very big, slap a Rogue's Passage on and call it a day. Or you can go the tribal route, make a bunch of vampires and go wide, have some lords and do that thing. Or you can do sort of the aristocrat thing, where you just sort of form this engine and drain people to death. And so I really, really like where he was going with this. I would love to use this card in any capacity, whether it be Standard, God forbid, an older format, or even Commander. But I just love this card, and I'll never forget. The first time I saw that art, I couldn't believe it. Like the hair and the armor, and just every time I look at it, I'm just like, oh, I can't. I love it.
The sword is amazing.
Yes.
Now, no. For those listening or watching, this is not the Orzhov review.
Right.
This is the Rivals of
back-to-back
Ixalan.
Appearances.
Back to back.
Love it, man.
Well done. Yeah, Alenda is really exciting for Elder Dragon Highlander Commander kind of shenanigans. Really pairs really nicely with...
Oh, we're tatering. We are in a tater nation. Wait. Okay.
Let me know when I'm back.
You're back. Okay, buddy.
Right.
Sorry. Full
No worries. Well, I mean, now I've lost my momentum, but we'll try and make it work.
Here we go.
Alenda's super exciting in EDH and in Commander. There are applications in Standard. I really like how she interacts with Metallic Mimic in particular. Either in play or after she's died, she has Metallic Mimic naming vampires has really exciting applications with her. So yeah, I can definitely see this particularly with the aristocrat style stuff. I always love that kind of deck, and so that's the one that I'm most excited to see explored with Alenda.
Well, thankfully, they just banned a host of cards in Standard, because that's what we do these days, is we just ban cards in Standard all the time. And and so now we're going to get to see this awesome Pro Tour with, wait a minute, the Pro Tour is not going to have any of these cool cards for interactions.
Because it's modern.
Because it's modern. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, whatever, I'm not bitter, it's fine. Reuben, what's your number 8?
My number 8 also pairs real nicely with Elenda the Dusk Rose, either going forwards or backwards. The Vampire Pinata needs some friends, preferably black-white friends, and there's no greater friend of Elenda the Dusk Rose than Legion Lieutenant. Oh. Legion Lieutenant is a 2/2 for a white and a black mana. It's a vampire knight and has one line of rules text. Other vampires you control get +1/+1. Both of the two-color tribes got lords in this set. Lord being shorthand for other insert creature type here. You control get +1/+1. And in particular for vampires, that's very exciting. They've never had anything quite like this before. They've never had anything quite this cheap. I mean, we've had Captivating Vampire, we've had Vampire Nocturnus, but Legion Lieutenant is very exciting for a number of reasons. Partially, I mean, certainly in EDH, Edgar Markov is a big popular commander. In Modern, your Nocturnus comes down as a 4/4, surviving Lightning Bolt. And in Standard, all of your tokens are now 2/2s, and most of your tokens are going to be lifelinkers, so it's really more like +2/+2 in terms of, the race or whatever. So this is a really exciting card, I think, for Standard to be able to make tribal synergies possible.
If they've tried to take away the energy for being as dominant, I don't think they killed it as a deck. If they're trying to tone down mono red, not kill it as a deck, this allows things like tribal decks to actually happen. Like, we have all these super cool cards. Sure would be awesome to play with them and not just auto scoop because Long Tusk Hub.
Yeah, sure. I really felt the absence of a lord, particularly a vampire lord in Ixalan. I remember when I was doing the pre-release, my boyfriend and I had, assembled our pool we broke our pool down into the tribes. And I remember the vampires being nice, but because they're all so small, a lot of them are 1/1s and 2/2s. And it's like when you're going up against dinosaurs and you're going up against, these fast pirates decks, I really missed that. I really felt the loss of that anthem effect, that lord effect that could really make these things compete because, either kind of like I said when I was describing Elenda, when you have a deck like that, you can either go the engine route, like the aristocrat style thing, or you can sort of go wide. And we didn't have any enablers to form the engine, but we certainly didn't have anything to make our things go big either. And so I was like, well, I can make 1/1s, but that's sometimes just not enough. And so having a lord, as we've seen in other formats, having a spirit deck that turns your 1/1s into 2/2s makes a world of difference. And maybe that'll be enough to push vampires forward.
Maybe, but we're going to move here to my number 8, which is the Ocho. The 8 is all about that rate, and the rate on this card is ridiculous. And again, this is one of those that, being old man Magic, being able to play since 1996, I see this creature, and I go like, what does it do? It does all of this? Thrashing Brontodon is 2 green and a generic mana for a 3/4. That's all it needed, by the way. We didn't need to keep going. We could just be like 3 mana, 3/4. You guys got to do that up top. Now, no. We had to keep going. It is an uncommon dinosaur that has 1 generic mana, sacrifice it, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So not only are you getting an insane rate, if you are getting wrecked by artifacts or enchantments, it's right there. It's hanging out. Like, these are pushed stats. I think they wanted this thing to see play. If there's a standard deck that has green mana in it, particularly dinosaurs in it, Thrashing Brontodon is going to be in that deck. I love this card because it's just way above the curve. This is like when Vampire Nighthawk showed up, and you're like, what? All of them? What? With the 2/3? I mean, all of that stuff. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of cards, specifically creatures, that let you carry out sideboard plans while still doing your main plan. That's one of the reasons why cards like Containment Priest are so good, because at the very worst, in a Death and Taxes deck or a mono white deck, it's still a 2/2 bear with flash.
Right.
Even if no graveyard shenanigans are happening, you're still just doing your thing, and you're not having to go off the plan with something like a Relic or a Grafdigger's Cage. It lines up really nicely with what you already want to do, and this is kind of the same thing where you could board in something like a Naturalize, but if you're an aggressive creature deck, you really want to keep that pressure up. You don't want to take a turn to Naturalize. You want to be doing what you're already doing and have it just happen to line up with something that counters your opponent.
I mean, Kasali Pride Mage was kind of like the precursor to this card, which was a 2 mana, white and a green for a 2/2 back in Shards of Alara that had Exalted. So whenever a creature attacks alone, it got +1/+1. And again, it had the same ability, 1 generic mana, sacrifice it, Naturalize. And that in and of itself was like format defining, amazing card, was ran in everything. If you were white green, you had this card. The card was seen in older formats. It was great. And one more mana gets you a 3/4 instead of a 2/2. I mean, whew,
okay.
Or a 3/4 that doesn't turn into, get bigger or whatever. But no, this card is amazing.
Yeah, it's an enormous creature. It shuts off a lot of the attacks that would typically be happening on turn 2 in a lot of these matchups. Things like Long Tusk Cub can't get through. A lot of the turn 1, turn 2 vampire or pirate plays aren't going to be able to get through for toughness. This card is a huge roadblock in addition to being able to have the extra utility of being able to handle a difficult artifact or enchantment.
So let's keep on this theme of huge creatures. Because oh boy, they added some pretty big dogs, and we've already talked about the Primal Hunger. Galta Primal Hunger is a card, but very often, what's better than a dinosaur with one head, right? 3 heads. I'm okay with 3 unique.
Do you know what's even better than 3?
4?
6.
Oh yeah, because you had 2 of these at your pre.
The boyfriend and I, these were our pre-release cards. Like that was his pre-release card, and that was my pre-release card.
Well, that's ridiculous. Zakama Primal Calamity. It is a calamity. It's in the name. So when you're a calamity, you cost 9 mana. A white, a green, a red, 6 generic mana for a 9/9. 9 mana, 9/9. That's where we're starting, ladies and gentlemen, with vigilance and reach and trample. And when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, which means, if you're being honest, not a lot of people like to be honest with big
What are you looking
like
at me
this.
for when you say that?
Zombifying up in here. Well, if you do cast it, you get to untap all lands you control. Like all 9 or whatever you were using. Right. Just give them back. It's fine, whatever. Because it also has 3 abilities. 3 heads, 3 abilities. 9 mana, 9/9. Sure. Red and 2 generic mana : it deals 3 damage to target creature. Green and 2 generic mana : it destroys target artifact or enchantment. We just talked about how important naturalizes were. And finally, for the lols, a white and 2 generic mana to gain 3 life. Just what? What?
Because you want to live, assuming if you're waiting 9 turns to cast this, assuming you're playing it fair, you're bound to have taken some hits, and so you want to make sure that you can survive long enough to watch it go loose and do its thing. I get it.
I mean, I get it's like it's like just imagine how unbelievably huge and scary and monstrous, and it's just like BRB healing salve. Like that's weird to me in and of itself, but that's okay. Maybe it's like eating something.
The utility of it is amazing. I mean, this is basically the 9/9 for 9 equivalent of a Confluence, right? Like Mystic Confluence or Fiery Confluence, where you're just like, all right, well, my 9/9's in play and I got all these untapped lands. I guess I'll deal 3 damage to 3 of your creatures, or I'll gain 9 life to put myself out of burn range, or I'll do some mixture of the two. This card is totally bananas. It also says cast not from your hand, so if you cast it as your commander, you still get the bonus, which is super nice. Card is insane. I mean, the rate on it is unbelievable. Being a Palinchron that allows you to untap all your lands is super useful. You don't have to use the abilities. You can just untap your lands and then attack with open mana now. Which is kind of awesome. Zakama Primal Calamity is super interesting. I love the 3-headed flavor with the 3 activated abilities, the 3 keyword abilities. I think it's just a home run of a card.
Yeah, I think this was there were a lot of people who were excited about Ixalan largely because of dinosaurs, and I feel like this card was a gift for them. And if you got through Ixalan and were like, well, you got your Stegosauruses, you got your T-Rexes, and the dinosaur people were like, and they were like, 3 heads. Like, just let the freak flag fly. Put all the abilities on it. Give you all the mana. Like, that's for you dinosaur fans.
You cannot get through this thing. It doesn't tap to attack. It can block any flyer, and it's trampling over whatever you're putting in front of it.
That's good, clean living. I'm not mad.
Super tough to deal with, for sure.
Is terrific. So, Reuben, what is your number 7?
So we're going to go from tall to small here, because as you know, I always like the skinnies. And the smaller, aggressive creatures are very exciting to me. This one pairs very nicely with my number 8, Legion Lieutenant. This is the 1-drop that you want to lead off with. And it's our first appearance of Ascend, I believe, in our top 10. My number 7 is Sky Marcher Aspirant. Sky Marcher Aspirant is a 1 mana, 2/1 vampire soldier, white creature, uncommon. It has Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. And Sky Marcher Aspirant has flying as long as you have the City's Blessing. Boy, howdy, let me tell you how good this card is. First of all, it's already Elite Vanguard. It's already Savannah Lions. That's already a rate that we've seen in Standard before. It has a relevant creature type in Vampire in Standard, as we've just discussed. And it gains flying later on in the game, once you've made the requisite number of Vampire tokens and land drops. Oh, by the way, your 1-drop that usually gets outclassed by turn 4 or 5 now is just flying over the top of your stupid Brontodons and you know, most of your merfolk idiots and things like that. Sky Marcher Aspirant is going to be a terror in Standard. It's going to be attacking for 3 on turn 2 a lot. It's going to be flying for the final points of damage a lot, and it is going to be, I can almost guarantee that this is going to be in the cube immediately on Magic Online, because it's better than most of the 2-mana 2/1s that are in there already. So this will be fighting alongside, you know, Mother of Runes and Kithion, Hero of Akros, and stuff like that. I just think that Sky Marcher Aspirant is super powerful, super pushed, just a great card.
This is where you can kind of chart out that Wizards knows that at the end of the day, we like more powerful stuff. We like power. We like it. We don't like it, but we totally like it because
well, yeah.
Because when it happens, it's super exciting. And you know, part of me is like, I remember, you know, getting my Force of Analines when I first started playing and thinking they were just the hotness. They were better than any other 1-drop in terms of power, power to mana ratio.
Right.
And now they just get free evasion. You don't even have to pay for it. It just happens.
You gotta put it on layaway though. You gotta reach a certain amount of. You gotta get a decent amount of credit. You gotta get a credit line to reach the flying point with your debit card, Sky Marcher Aspirants.
It doesn't take much, I guess.
Doesn't take much.
And,
no.
And I would also note that for those, and this honestly, this was weird because it's weird. It was actually terrific because I got to read LSV's limited set review stuff. And he just crapped on all the Ascend cards. He thought they were terrible because, and I was just like, I mean, like, I don't really want to tell OSV like how to do his stuff, but I'm telling you that ability is nuts because it just happens.
Especially in Vampires, where you have cards like Queen's Commission and Call the Feast that are going to turn on Ascend on turns 3 and 4. This card is bananas. If you go turn 1 this, turn 2 creature, turn 2, any creature turn 3, and play Call the Feast on turn 4, if all of your creatures were still alive, you have Ascend on turn 4. It's very easy to trigger Sky Marcher Aspirant. Right.
When he's like, you know, Vona's Hunger is not that, you know, as good. I'm like, Vona's Hunger is ridiculous. You don't even understand how stupid that card is.
Right. Vona's Hunger is good in a different way than Sky Marcher Aspirant is. But it's still very powerful. I think that the bonus that you get for Ascend is not taxed at all, in much the same way that a lot of the energy cards, the bonus that you get from the energy wasn't taxed that much. And so I think that the really pushed Ascend cards, particularly the Sky Marcher Aspirant, I'm telling you, this is going to potentially be a format defining card.
Wow. All right, Aaron, what is your number 7?
Do you know how many people tagged me when this card came out? When you're me and you make it very clear what you're all about, you know, I'm about dead things, I'm about killing things, I'm about bringing things back. You tend to remind people of you, and so it's not uncommon for spoiler season to come around and for me to get tagged in things. I was tagged when Get Rod Monster came out. Aaron, it's the new thing in Dredge. No, but I appreciate the shout out. You know, whatever. Ever After came out. Aaron, we got a reanimation spell. I see you. Thank you. And likewise, when this card was spoiled, Facebook, Twitter, my notifications lit up. Aaron, dead things. It's you.
Hashtag on brand.
It's hashtag on brand, and I love it. And I actually opened 2 of these at the pre-release, and I'm very sad we didn't get to use them. My number 7 is Journey to Eternity. It's 1, a black and a green. It's a legendary enchantment aura. Enchant creature you control. When enchanted creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control, and then return Journey to Eternity to the battlefield, transformed under your control, which turns into Atzal, Cave of Eternity, which is a legendary land. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, or you can pay 3, a black and a green, to return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Essentially, kind of like a Whip of Erebos, but without the lifelink, and you don't have to exile it end of turn. This is sweet. It's in Golgari colors. The boyfriend was contemplating building a Bug Merfolk deck because because he had one of those rare merfolk that mills you. And so you can tell that he's not a dredge player because he's like, why do I want to mill myself? It's like, baby, dead things. Focus.
Right here, you never play Innistrad Limited? Let's get real. Come on.
And he just didn't get it. I was like, look, you can bring the things you mill back. And he's like, now I get what it's like to be you. And so, yeah, this is great. You know, we haven't had really good reanimation in Standard for a while. You know, we had Ever After, but that cost like 7. We've had the, you know, the odd sort of Necromancers, 3 and 2 black, you know, yada, yada. But this never goes away. Like, you can just boop, boop, and I love this. And I hope to God someone does something with this, because if there's graveyard shenanigans, you can almost find me right behind you.
Well, with Sakura Tribe Elder, you're able to get to like 7 mana on turn 4. This card in particular, of all of the flip cards, I felt like this was the most likely to hit a constructed environment, because once you flip it over, it like taps for mana and then does something completely unreasonable as its second ability, because it doesn't have all those weird little clauses. And again, I appreciate this kind of sort of there's the finesse of Magic cards these days. Like, look how it's worded, look how it says this, look how it doesn't say that. It doesn't say exile it at the end of turn. It doesn't say exile it if it dies. It doesn't say it has life.
Clean living. This is just
bring it. Just bring it.
Yeah.
Just keep bringing it.
No clauses. No. You know, make sure this works. Make sure that you have all the the proper nomenclature. No, none of that. Put it on the battlefield. That's all you need.
But the real killer is that the first half still brings back the first creature. Mm-hmm. You still get the first creature back for free.
Yeah.
What is happening? Now, what is happening here?
My problem with Journey to Eternity seeing playing constructed is that we do still have stuff like Magma Spray and Harness Lightning. Magma Spray in particular is a killer for this card because you can untap and still just Magma Spray the creature and it won't flip. But I do think that this card is super exciting. I think that it does have extremely high potential. If there's like a Jund or Black-Green control deck with Vraska, Relic Seeker, that could certainly work as well. This is also fun, interesting in a fun way for Commander, because if you play this in Commander in like your Marin deck, right? You're playing like the Reanimator strategy anyway to begin with, and your opponents are all going to be playing like Thespian Stages and Vesuvas. Unless they're also playing Black-Green, they can't activate your Atzal, which is kind of hilarious. I really like that it has that sort of built-in protection in your Commander deck. That's super corner case. I love the story that this card tells. I think it's an interesting design. It's a ton of fun, and obviously I'm rooting for this card to be good.
I mean, with the flavor text of every journey has its inevitable end, ... on the front half with...
Come on, Semisonic.
With ... but every end is a new beginning. That's right. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. That's how that works.
You can always go home, but you can't stay in the graveyard.
Well, hopefully this card leads to some closing times in Standard. Just send them home. Man. Just out.
Hashtag Semisonic. All right. Let's move here to number 6. Aaron, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is another one of those cards where the hype just overtook me. You know, when I saw the art for Elenda, I couldn't contain myself. And when I saw that this card existed, I also couldn't contain myself. I've been hanging out with the Vorthoses a lot lately. I belong to their Discord channel. They've been kind of letting me into their world and teaching me their ways. And I've been keeping up with sort of the conspiracy theories behind Ixalan that I've been going back to when we first entered the plane and what the symbol meant and where we'd seen that symbol before and everything like that. And there were some Vorthoses that predicted this character was responsible. And then there were others that were like, no, you've gone a little too deep there. And then when it turned out to be true, everybody lost their mind. I lost my mind. The hype was contagious. It's freaking Azor. My number 6 is Azor the Lawbringer. Like, oh my god. So it's 2 freaking Azor. 2 white and 2 blue. Legendary creature Sphinx. 6/6 flying. When Azor the Lawbringer enters the battlefield, each opponent can't cast instant or sorcery spells during that player's next turn. So you're bound to untap with this creature, barring like an O-ring maybe or something weird. Whenever Azor attacks, you may pay X white and 2 blue. Sound familiar? If you do, you gain X life and draw X cards. And shout out to the listener who had quoted me in a tweet and was like, we just talked about this. We had done our Azorius list.
How we're never getting Sphinx's Revelation back in Standard.
We're never getting Sphinx's Revelation, you guys, like ever. And then like this came out like shortly after. Wizards was like, hold my beer. And so this is fantastic. You know, I hope that with the reduction, I hope that with the banning and restricted announcement that maybe this card can see play. With the Chupacabra, I don't don't have a lot of hope, but damn it, it's Azor. Like, he's the founder of the Azorius clan, the Azorius guild. There's a lot of lore about him being like one of the original planeswalkers. We don't know very much about him, and so I love that this also might be a hint that we might go back to Ravnica, which I love. Look at the art again. The artist Ryan Pankos, I believe he used a statue to sort of map how he wanted to do this, and there are pictures of the statue, and just the art is gorgeous. And for the Vorthoses to be right, those deep dive Vorthoses that were like, it's Azor, you guys, it's freaking Azor, like, come on.
There is a time lapse of him painting this painting on YouTube, which is the most mind-blowing 11 minutes you'll spend. And it's interesting because what Patrick Sullivan was sort of ranting about in sort of an offshoot of what Patrick Chapin was saying, now that the article is over a month old, you could read it on SCG Premium. And I read it, and it was interesting because it was talking about investment. We went over this a little bit in the podcast, where this is a super cool card that you are never, ever going to invest in Standard. Because if you don't get to your next turn, it sucks. And Ravenous Chupacabra gets around its only ability to stop it from ideally sucking. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the ability on it is supposed to be like, you're cool. You're cool until next turn. But this ridiculous creature with this crazy rate that is just going to knock it out of the sky means that you've wasted 6 mana probably tapping out to get this guy out there. So I love the creature. I love the idea. The fact you attack and you get Sphinx's, you get the Sphinx's Revelation. That's everything. The Vorthos is a home run. But for Standard, they just killed it. And that sucks.
It also seems like a flavor fail. Like, you're looking at Azor looking all majestic and such, and then you really think about it, and he's just going to be on this pedestal, and some mangy little dog is just going to come up and eat him. Like,
here comes that dog.
I'm just imagining him like being chased around his sanctum by a little dog. But how is that possible? That should not be able to kill freaking Azor. I'm sorry.
It's ridiculous. So Azor the Lawbringer, in and of itself, still a terrific, terrific creature. Reuben, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is going to be the first Planeswalker that we discussed today. It's going to be Bull Dad, as some folks have called him. It's Angrath the Flame Chained. 3 colorless red-black legendary Planeswalker Angrath, +1. Each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. -3, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step if it has converted mana cost of 3 or less. And -8, each opponent loses life equal to the number of cards in his or her graveyard coming into the battlefield with 4 loyalty. There's a lot of tribal synergies in this set. There's a lot of like working together, trying to get interesting combos. Angrath don't care about none of that. Angrath's just a good card. Angrath gonna do what Angrath want to do by himself. He's good. There's an argument to be made that this is the best card in the set, but just like for limited particularly, but also in terms of pure power level by itself. There's an argument to be made that this is a thing that can be a centerpiece of its own deck on the power level of the other things that we have in Standard. It's just an extremely good card, and also gives us an excuse to say, look at me. Look at me. I'm the captain now.
That's what Angrath lets you do. Now, CVM had this guy, and he was bananas. Every time he showed up, he was just completely ridiculous. Now, CVM had an incredibly, incredibly aggressive pool, and this is sealed, and Planeswalkers are stupid and limited. So, for this card to be good and constructed, I mean, like, for red-black to be playable and constructed, I mean, it's weird. It feels like there's such a higher bar for red-black than almost any other combination. Like, good luck making your red-black deck work because all these other colors can answer so many different things. Blue, white, and green have so many different options of shutting things down, stopping things, and answering things. Red-black is just like, I'm going to hit you as hard as I can until you stop moving.
I mean, there's some really interesting things that you can do with Angrath. First of all, it's a nightmare for control decks. You get to get rid of your opponent's blockers, particularly annoying stuff like a Danto Vanguard gets sacrificed. You can steal your opponent's or reactivate your own Exalted Glorybringers. Like if you go Glorybringer, Exalt, kill your guy, play Angrath, target my own Glorybringer. It doesn't say opponent's creature, it just says untap. Then you get 2 bites of that apple. I just think that Angrath is a really powerful card, and I would not be surprised to see it have an effect on Standard.
That second ability is amazing. Like,
yes,
you really have to pay attention. Again, as is the theme here, pay attention to the wording, how it's worded, what you can target, how it works, Card is terrific. Now, I was going to have a number 6, but it turns out it's higher on somebody else's list. So, sadness on the stack. Sadness. But that's okay. That means we're gonna go around here to number 5. And for number 5, which I have one of these, is one of those good old-fashioned value cards. Not only is it good old-fashioned value, it's a card that reminds you of an older card that is arguably a better version of it. And this card in particular, I know has excited a lot of people playing Pauper. Pauper's starting to see a huge resurgence. The Professor's really going on his Pauper tour and all the Grand Prix. There's 160 plus people or whatever in the first event that they did. And Dusk Legion Zealot, I can almost guarantee 100% is going to see play in that format, because I have played a Phyrexian Rager, and if you cut a mana off Phyrexian Rager and make it a little bit smaller, it is still a very playable card. For a black and a generic mana, it is a 1/1 Vampire Soldier that is common, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose a life. Now, Phyrexian Rager was 3 mana for a 2/2 that did the same thing. 100% playable, super great. Elvish Visionary in black is worth a life. It is worth it, and it is awesome. And it blocks things, and it obviously can't attack, but it's not great. You can sacrifice it to stuff. It's a vampire, so it has synergies. You know, and there's just a lot of value there that you're able to get out of this card over and over again. And if you weren't able to live in a world with Elvish Visionary, let me tell you, it is some sweetness.
Yeah, this is a fabulous card. I mean, you weren't playing Phyrexian Rager for that 2/2 body. You were playing it for the ability. Right. So shaving off a mana, I'm okay with the -1/-1, and so is literal everyone else. The only way where Phyrexian Rager might be theoretically better is if you were playing it in an aggro deck like Vampire Tribal. But even then, I still think I would rather have more bodies and go wide with all of the new Lord effects and the new Anthem and things like that. Right. This ability is spectacular. Elvish Visionary is too good for Standard, folks. I mean, I don't know how they printed a Vampire Visionary, but they did. So I am 100% on board with this card. I 100% agree. It is a fabulous addition to your Vampire decks.
It is awesome. Reuben, what is your number 5?
I got a lot of... I mean, this set is like Reuben.set. There's a lot of great stuff on the aggressive bent. I mean, there's not so much of the graveyard shenanigans that you typically look for when you're looking for a Campbell-esque kind of business. There's a bunch of token producers for your 3 dudes seriously. #5kids, #75 grandkids, hashtag, etc. But there's some 2 power 1 drops in this set, and boy, let me tell you, Daring Buccaneer brings me back. It warms the cockles of my heart.
Cockles.
The president of Hasbro, Chris Cockles of my heart, are warmed by seeing the line of text on Daring Buccaneer. So Daring Buccaneer is a 2/2 for a red. Uncommon human pirate. As an additional cost to cast Daring Buccaneer, reveal a pirate from your hand or pay 2 colorless. This was harkens back to a cycle from Lorwyn that included Silvergill Adept, which was, of course, reprinted in this set, but also included Gold Meadow Stalwart, which is one of my all-time favorite cards, which was a 2/2 for 1, Kithkin Soldier, that cost 3 more unless you revealed a Kithkin. So this is also just a gray ogre if you have no other humans or no other pirates in your hand. But more importantly, it's happening. Like, we're playing Daring Buccaneer on turn 1, and then we're playing Carry Zev on turn 2 after we revealed it on the first turn. And then we're attacking for a gosh darn billion every turn thereafter. I am in love with this card. I think it's great. It would be better if it were in blue and black, or black, because the pirate support in blue and black I think is a little bit better. But, you know, I'm excited to play Rakdos Pirates now. I think that you know, Rigging Runner is a good friend of this card. Lannery Storm is also a great one. There's the support there for a nice mono red pirate deck. So I'm real excited for this.
Yeah, they've certainly pushed it. Again, this is one of those things where it's like, what kind of tools does red-black need in order to survive as its own type of deck? Can it is it just going to get shut down because that's sort of the way things go? And for red-black decks, because man, there was a red-black deck I think for a little while during Return to Ravnica. Was that right? That was sort of aristocrats,
the Rakdos Cacklers, and, you know, just like good aggressively costed creatures. Yeah,
right. And then before that, I mean, literally, I think it was like the previous Ravnica, when you could play Genju of the Spires and Dark Confidant.
Right.
And if you know what Genju of the Spires is and what it does, congratulations, you're as old as I am.
Yeah.
Which is fine, because I liked Kamigawa. But Darien Buccaneer in and of itself is a fine creature. Is the start that you want to have Rakdos Pirate to have. You want this to be your turn 1 play. It is pressuring your opponent. It is a red mana 2/2, which is always scary, and it doesn't take much in order to just be out there and rocking and rolling. So, it's not a vampire. It is a pirate. There's no real pirate lords per se.
Well, there's the 4 mana Neckbreaker, but you're right. It's a little bit tougher. There's a 4 mana Admiral Bucket Brass, and then there's the 4 mana Neckbeard. I'm calling it Neckbeard because that's what CVM called it once, and then I can't ever not call it that. But you're right. There's no 2 mana Lord. There's no Lord of Atlantis for pirates. But we'll just have to get by with aggressively cost creatures without a Lord.
Yeah, I mean, because basically with your number 8 and number 7, Legion Lieutenant into Sky Marcher Aspirant, if you flip that around in terms of the way you're playing the game, you're attacking for 3 damage on turn 2 versus this one, which is only attacking for 2. So it has to somehow make up that.
If I'm revealing Karizev, I'm attacking for 5 on turn 2.
Hello.
You do make a good point. Aaron, do you have a number 5?
My number 5 is my last hire on my list, so I'm home free after this.
All right, that's cool. Well, in that case, we'll go on here to number 4. And Aaron, do you have a number 4? Well,
I do have a number 4. So yeah, so everything above 5 and above is going to be my old schoolers. I love to bring up cards that there is potential for these cards to see play in older formats because that's where I tend to hang my hat. So there are 2 things that every good combo deck, in my experience, typically needs. You need rituals, or you need tutors to specifically go looking for your pieces, and sometimes you might even need wishes, like Cunning Wish, Burning Wish, things of that nature. You guys like to toss around the phrase putting your chocolate together with your peanut butter. Why choose? Why should you have to choose between a tutor or a wish when you can effectively have both? My number 4 is Mastermind's Acquisition. So Mastermind's Acquisition is 2 and 2 black. It's a sorcery. You can choose one. It has 2 modes to it. A, you can search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library, which is essentially the tutor half of it. Or you can choose a card you own from outside the game, which means your sideboard. It does not mean your exile zone, so a little caveat there, and put it into your hand. And so it's whatever you need it to be. And there is some discussion about whether or not this is good enough for these storm decks, again, because we have cards like Dark Petition, we have the Ad Nauseams, and sometimes you, depending on your circumstances, you might need one mode more than the other. And I love that there's a lot of discussion around this card. I love the art. The art is very cryptic in terms of we don't really know what's happening, and then the flavor text says another piece of a nefarious puzzle. And so what could possibly be nefarious? We have Azor. He's a law person. That's good, right? And it's like, maybe not. And so I'm anxious to see if anything comes of this card. Like I said, it's nice when you can do more than one thing at a time, and especially if you can facilitate a broken deck. I'm all for it.
I mean, you take Death Wish, which, by the way, was 3 mana, 2 black and a generic mana, but also cost you half your life rounded up to get this ability. So 1 mana pays for half your life rounded up. Let's go ahead and put that on there. Yeah. Alongside Diabolic Tutor, which literally was just the first part of this card. The first part of this card, go get a card, put it in your hand, congratulations, shelf your deck. So they just basically made it better. They made it great. And so how much this sees play, I don't know, but when you give these incredibly powerful modal options, either I'm going to go find the sideboard card that I need to crush you, or I'm just going to go find the thing in my deck that's going to end the game, you get both halves. You get the chocolate and the peanut butter.
Choose one or both. Get chocolate or get peanut butter. Yeah, obviously Diabolic Tutor is not that exciting, but in for example, Commander, Diabolic Tutor is very exciting. But the real key here is getting a card from outside the game, particularly for Standard, maybe even Modern, to be able to craft a wish board, as it used to be called, with cards like Cunning Wish, Death Wish, Golden Wish, Glittering Wish, things like that. The most recent example of this that we've seen is Pull from the Blind Eternities, which didn't end up doing too much in Standard, but this allows you to pull any card from outside the game. And from a Vorthos perspective, this is Bolas having an impact on the Ixalan storyline. This is the big bad of the multiverse pulling another piece through the multiverse into his nefarious plan, another piece of a nefarious puzzle. If you guys didn't realize, this is Nicol Bolas being like, ooh, I'll take that and add that to my hilarious Tezzeret experiment that I've been doing over the past, millennia or whatever. This is just a really cool card on all those fronts.
It is a super, super neat design and card in and of itself. So, Reuben, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is the only hire that is on my list.
Wow. Okay, then. Well, that means that I get to go ahead and talk about my number 4. My number 4 is great because it is like is easily the coolest math problem that this set is going to introduce to you. There is the ability for things to be copied. There's the ability for some creatures to be able to copy themselves, but Polyraptor has the ability to basically do both and make an amazing math equation for you. It's 2 green, 6 generic mana, so you're paying 8 mana for a mythic 5/5 dinosaur. So if you're paying 8 mana for the 5/5 dinosaur, it would be pretty freaking good. Well, it is, because whenever it's dealt damage, you create a token that's a copy of it. So you have the new Forerunner. If you have a Forerunner in play, then you play the Polyraptor. How many Polyraptors do you get before the Forerunner dies? We went back and forth with all sorts of numbers sort of over the pre-release weekend, where we were sure it was like 16, and then we were sure it was 7, right, and then we kind of ended up with 8, because you don't have to do the Forerunner triggers. You can decide to not do those. But regardless, this is a ridiculous bomb and sealed. Maybe not that much in draft, because draft, I believe, is going to be incredibly fast. But the card itself, just the idea that you're going to hurt it and it's going to make more of it. And so if you're going to chump block it, it's going to make more of it. If you're going to try to kill it with double blocking, it's going to make another copy of it. This is the cleverest of girls, if you will.
Yeah. I really like this card a lot. I think the art is super sweet. It tells a story without having to fully tell the story. I think that the ability is awesome and leads to all those logic puzzles. The final answer, I believe, was 8, because the Forerunner of the Empire would kill itself. And you had to ignore one of the triggers, because not all of the Polyraptor triggers resolve all at the same time, but whatever. Right. You can just try it on Magic Online and see how many you can make overall. There are some really cool things that you can do with Polyraptor. I like the name a lot because it's a really feathered dinosaur.
Do you know how many of my friends are polyamorous? And
yes,
the minute this card came out, they were like, "It's me."
Yeah, I identify as a Polyraptor. Yeah, that's wow, another great thing about this card. Especially if you have any friends that have short arms, they can identify as a Polyraptor. I wish I could identify as a Polyraptor, because this card is amazing. It's super cool. Graham had it in his pre-release deck. I saw it get some cool action in the regular pre-release at my local game store. It gets out of hand super quick, as long as your opponent doesn't have like an Impale or something along those lines to be able to deal with it immediately. Definitely worthy of a mythic slot in this set.
So we're moving here to number 3. And sometimes, well, first of all, I like this card in particular because it's powerful. This card is powerful. It's neat. It's going to, I think, do a whole lot of good things now that some of the best decks have been powered down a little bit. I think it might actually see some play. Has awesome abilities that don't require mana. That's another thing. But sometimes things get pushed up a little higher on the list because they have an incredible memory or a moment of that, that relates to you. There was a point in the pre-release where I paid 3 mana and I pointed a Bombard at Kumena, Tyrant of Oroska, and I said, kill it. I didn't say deal 4 damage. I didn't say I'm targeting Bombard. Let's let the spell resolve. No. I said kill it, and didn't notice that there was a Merfolk Lord right next to it. So I was an idiot, and I lost that game. It was bad. It was seriously awful. Kumena, Tyrant of Oroska, is a blue-green and a generic mana for a 2/4 mythic legendary Merfolk Shaman. You tap another untapped Merfolk you control, and it can't be blocked this turn. You tap 3 untapped Merfolk you control, of which it is 1, and you draw a card. Tap 5 untapped Merfolk you control, and you put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control. So it has the ability to inevitably end the game with its first ability. It has the ability to put you ahead in resources and/or and things you can do with the second ability. And lastly, if you're stalling out on the board, you get to kind of do both, essentially. You get to make your entire army larger and then just send and come in next time, or just keep making your army larger until it kills your opponent. This card is amazing, and this is one of those cards that I hope, because of the bannings, it's good enough to see play, because I think this card is great, and it's very Crypt Breaker-esque in terms of the way it's drawing cards, but it has all these other abilities that are absolutely fantastic, and to be a 2/4 is also very important. It doesn't die to 3 damage type stuff, and can block 3 power type guys, and so this card is sweet, and I love everything about it.
I appreciate that they took a different approach with the lords because obviously, merfolk are known for having the critical mass of lords in older formats. You have the Lord of Atlantis and Master of the Pearl Trident and Mirror Regery and things like that. And so it was obvious that if merfolk was going to have any chance in standard, it needed a lord. And it would have been very easy for them to just give us the one we have, the blue-green one of book, +1/+1, call today, or even, God forbid, the +1/+1 island walk like we've seen before. But I really like the different approach to this of its counters instead of just the straight anthem. It's unblockable, which I think is really nifty. Instead of just giving you island walk, you can have essentially any walk, and that's really, really cool. And I just really appreciate the risk they took with this card because they could have given us what they've done before and just slapped a different name on it. But this one makes you think and has more lines of play available to it, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, Merfolk Mistbinder is the Lord because we keep I can't remember its name, so I had to go look it up.
Right.
For those
you also forgot that it was in play that one time.
Wow.
It was the moment of the pre-release. What else are we going to do? Yeah,
Googling burn centers. Be right back.
Yeah, no worries. Kumena was my number 4. This was the higher that I had on my list. Certainly just a very exciting card. Anytime you have a creature with 3 activated abilities, you harken back to Deathray Shaman, and you think, man, this thing has so many options. This thing's 3 mana with 4 toughness. It survives a Harnessed Lightning. It survives a Lightning Bolt in Modern. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with Kumena. You can there's a Kumena's Speaker into Silvergill Adept into Kumena draw card line that's very exciting. It's an ideal commander for your Merfolk tribal deck. Whereas previously all you had was Sig River Guide previously. Yeah. Now you get access to the green ones. This is just a very cool card, very cool design. Obviously, Kumena is super central to the storyline of finding Urazka, and just a home run all the way around.
Yeah, can we go back just real quick about the storyline here? Now, in the most recent Magic story, Kumena was in it. This is where Kumena's Awakening shows up. Kumena goes up the steps of the tower to the Flying Temple of whatever, and it's like, oh man, I'm here. It's time to be great. And then vampires show up and throw him out the window. That's what they do. He's like, I'm fighting. And they go, whee!
Like, that's cute, girl.
A little bit. And that's what's happening on the art for Expel from Urazka is Kumena getting tossed out the car.
Who hasn't wanted to throw a merfolk out the window? Come on.
Yeah, fair.
It's so weird. They're like, yeah, he made it. About all these trials, whatever, out the window.
Nope, go
Get
fish.
out. You're done. Go away. Oh, that was just, it struck me as funny. Reuben, what is your number 3?
My number 3 might be the card that I want to open in limited the most, more than Angrath, more than any of the other rares. I think it might be the card that I want to open the most. It also has, for my money, the most beautiful art in the set. I'm excited for the Grand Prix, where this will be the playmat, which unfortunately won't be Grand Prix Phoenix. It will instead be Grand Prix Seattle.
Who let that happen?
I know, that's just not hashtag on brand. So my number.
Oh.
2 colorless red 4/3 creature type Phoenix. It has flying. And when Rekindling Phoenix dies, you create an 0/1 red elemental creature token at the beginning of your upkeep. Sacrifice this creature and return target card named Rekindling Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste until end of turn. Super exciting card. I mean, it's got all of the good... Phoenixes are super iconic. Not as iconic as dragons or goblins, but certainly there have been a number of phoenixes throughout the history of Magic. Shivan Phoenix comes to mind. Chandra's Phoenix comes to mind. It says all the good parts of like an Akum Firebird with the big toughness, so it doesn't die to a magma spray by itself. It's got the power of an Ash Cloud Phoenix. So those 4/3 flying stats are super reasonable for 4 mana. The fact that when it comes back it has haste and can just keep on beating down is super cool. The fact that it's a glowing owl is kind of awesome. I've never seen a Phoenix owl before, and that makes me super excited for that. Phoenixes are always fun and exciting to see how they can reimagine the ability of what a Phoenix does. And this is the first one that really says to me, you know what? I really like what they're doing with this one from a power level perspective. It feels mythic. It feels exciting. It feels fun. I mean, it's not going to see standard play until Hazoret gets out of here because they're fighting for the same spot. But I really like what they did with Rekindling Phoenix.
This was my number 10.
Nice.
The art. Let's talk about that. Jason Rainville knocking it out of the park. You can see sort of the Aztec callback in the wings, the colors. Like when you really look deeply, when you really move inward, you see like the purples. Not only is the design a unique take on Phoenixes, but again, we're used to fire, bird. They're just stamping it. Go, like get it out of here. But like this is such a unique take. You're seeing the trees, and the trees almost being illuminated by the wake of the tail, and almost like it looks like it might be almost touching water or touching. I mean, it's just gorgeous elements you haven't seen before. I love also the flavor of it leaving behind an ember that you can essentially put out. The elemental has to be sacrificed at the beginning of your upkeep. So if you can get rid of that thing, the Phoenix ain't coming back. And so that's a really neat thing. It kind of reminds me of Elisrazor for our World of Warcraft friends out there, and her ashes and feathers and things of that nature. And so, yeah, this card, amazing. I actually think there might still be a chance in the red decks. I think the Phoenix and the Hazoret are both good in different situations.
Yes.
If God forbid you have those cards in your hand, you can still use your Phoenix, but you can't use Hazoret. And so, I like this card. I think it's one of the most beautiful. I don't normally like red cards, but this is gorgeous.
Well, it's a gorgeous card. It has a very powerful ability. It's the most interesting Phoenix I've ever seen, and we've had 13 of them in Magic's history, and I do think this is one of the best that they've ever made. Now, if you want to go back and take a look at what Phoenixes used to be like, there's this card called Ash Cloud Phoenix that was absolutely terrible. There's this other card called Flame Wreath Phoenix, which was like a dumpster fire, and with tributes and not paying tributes to get back your whatevers. And this thing is just...
Shard Phoenix saw play, obviously.
Sure.
Shard Phoenix won a Pro Tour. Right. Chandra's Phoenix is probably the best Phoenix that's happened. Right. Shivan Phoenix saw Fringe play. There have been a couple of decent Phoenixes, but this one is definitely up there with Chandra's Phoenix in terms of playability.
Exactly. This, to me, is one that I think can see play. I agree with you. I think Hazoret... And I agree with Aaron. I think Hazoret and the Phoenix kind of they work on different axes.
Different things, yeah. They're played in different decks for sure.
Right, or you can take out your Hazorets and put in the Phoenix when it is the best choice for the matchup, for example.
Sure.
I could see that happen as well. But it's great to have a Phoenix that, A, is an all-new take. I've never seen Phoenixes act like this. Normally it's just return it to your hand or pay some mana, return it to your hand or whatever. Now it's like, well, I'll give you the option, but you have this little window of time with which to do so.
Yeah.
Which is terrific. So, and Rekindling Phoenix was my number 6. So we all had it on our list.
There we go.
Somewhere.
All of us had it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Aaron, what is your number 3?
My number 3 has received comparisons to Memory Jar. Google Memory Jar for the folks at home. Those are big shoes to fill. Restricted in Vintage, banned in Legacy. How long, Old Man Magic, how long did it last before it got banned?
It was, they want to call it emergency ban. They want to say it was retroactively added to the ban list. They don't like the emergency word, but it didn't actually make it to its first event, which I believe was the Grand Prix, right?
Right. I think it was 2 weeks. I think it was banned after 2 weeks.
Okay. So the Vintage fans are calling it the next Memory Jar. They're describing this card in terms of being as good as Memory Jar. Those are very big shoes to fill. It is a pivotal moment in the Magic story as well, which I won't spoil for you, but the stories have been top-notch in this block, and definitely want to look at what happens. And I've been running into some people testing cards to take advantage of this in very unusual ways, and I hope it lives up to the hype. My number 3 is Induced Amnesia. So Induced Amnesia is 2 and a blue. It's an enchantment. When Induced Amnesia enters the battlefield, target player exiles all cards from their hand face down and then draws that many cards. And then when Induced Amnesia leaves the battlefield, was put into the graveyard, you return those cards to your owner's hand. Whereas with Memory Jar, you had to discard. You didn't get to keep any of them. You get to keep all these. There's no discarding, there's no whatever. And so I've been seeing people in Vintage test this deck that revolves around like hatching plans, perilous research, which is a cantrip where you have to sacrifice a permanent afterwards. So what's sweeter than drawing 2 cards and then whoop, sacrifice your Induced Amnesia and get all them cards back. And cards like Abjure. I faced a young man that was running Abjure, which is a blue counter spell for 1 blue, and you have to sacrifice a permanent. Whoop, sacrifice your Induced Amnesia.
Blue permanent.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And so there are hatching plans was a thing back in the day, and that is being tested as we speak. And I love it. I love when a card can just sort of shoot through all the other formats. No one's talking about this in Modern. No one's talking about it in Legacy. But damn it, the Vintage guys are trying it, and I think it's great. And I hope it works. And I love the art as well. I love specifically the Veraska shot on this is beautiful. I feel like that's a light we've never really seen her in before. But drawing cards is great, and especially if you don't have to, if there's no downside, you're not having to discard them. There's not a limited window in which you get to use them. them. They're just yours. And if there's ways to manipulate that, I think that's great. And this is awesome.
That's sweet. So we're going to move on here to number 2. Number 2 is... sorry guys, feeling a little under weather this week.
I also have a cold too, so astute viewers might notice me blowing my nose with the mute button on. So
we are working through it as the professionals we are. But I will take the one that is not currently ill, Reuben. You happen to have a same, and it happens to be with me.
Yes.
So tell the world what our number 2 is.
So our number 2 is probably, whereas Rekindling Phoenix is probably the best mythic in the set and the mythic that I want to open the most, Tendershoot Dryad is probably the rare I want to open the most, and it's pretty close as to which one I actually want more, because Tendershoot Dryad gets out of hand quick. It is a 2/2 Dryad for 4 colorless and a green with Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. Saprolings you control have +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing. This is reminiscent of a number of creatures from Magic's past, perhaps most notably Verdant Force, a classic fatty from back in the day. But for me, and I'm sure for Evan, the one that I recall the most for this is Creekwood Liege, because it's a Call the Herd every turn. Right?
Call the Herd every turn.
That one didn't turn out so well in terms of it actually being a Call the Herd every turn. This one could be, maybe. This is a super powerful card. It's easily splashable with the only 1 green mana. It gets out of hand very quickly. Boy, Tendershoot Dryad is a heck of a card.
It is amazing, and you got to see, if you want to go back and watch my matches in the pre-release, this thing gets out of hand immediately. Reuben chose poorly and killed the 5-mana Altasaur that reduced all damage but 1 to my dinosaurs instead. He killed that instead of the Tendershoot Dryad, upon which I began making 3/3s every upkeep until he died. Because this thing triggers its own Ascend really quickly. I mean, I was playing Tendershoot Dryad as like my 8th card, and then it would make the 9th, and on my upkeep it would make the 10th, which would then trigger, and all of a sudden, you know, the lights come on. This card is totally amazing. Anything that says each upkeep has to be respected in ways that, you know, just each, your upkeep or their upkeep or whatever, making continuous blockers, continuous permanents for the ability. Tendershoot Dryad is just, it is the best rare of the set in limited, in my opinion. Even as I understand that draft is very fast, nothing is going to stop this thing once that train gets rolling.
Yeah. I think that it's also going to be super good in Commander. There are lots of decks that want lots of tokens. Things like Gav, Guru of Spores, is definitely in love with the Tendershoot Dryad, and might even see some constructed play in Standard, depending on which direction we go in. You know, factories of armies in a can like this are always super worth looking into, particularly because Glorious Destiny exists now. The Immortal Sun got printed in this set. There are lots of ways to aid the Tendershoot Dryad in sticking around and making even bigger of an army.
Oh yeah, super cool. Aaron, what is your number 2?
I've been very open about the fact that I belong to a little local Commander group, and I love these people a lot. They've single-handedly made me enjoy Commander. But we have one young man in our group, and I'm 90% sure he's watching. Hello, Peter. I see you. Peter is known for his Atraxa deck. And Atraxa gets out of hand quickly, and Atraxa tends to win with things like Rings of Brighthearth, Chain Veil, and all sorts of Planeswalker shenanigans are going on. So he'll just drop a Tamiyo and be like, ultimate, and there's just nothing you can do but watch. And then Tezzeret happens, and then Jace is happening, and the decks that we tend to play are not equipped to deal with all these shenanigans. But then this card came out, and everybody in my pod sent Peter a message, and we were like, we're coming for you. This card has also attracted interest in Vintage, specifically in these Shops decks, which they tend to run a card called Mishra's Factory, which lets you get 3 colorless mana that you have to spend on artifacts. You could essentially get this on turn 2. If you have 2 factories, or even just a factory and a half, you're going to get there in like half the time. This card is scary. My number 2 is the Immortal Sun. I see you, Peter. I see you.
Yeah.
So the Immortal Sun is 6 colorless mana, which sounds like a lot, but we'll get there. Legendary artifact. Players can't activate Planeswalker's loyalty abilities. I'm sorry. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card. Spells you cast cost 1 colorless dust to cast, and then creatures you control get +1/+1. So in a Shops deck, which is essentially an artifact aggro deck, to be able to cheat this out, because you're going to do that with things like Ancient Tomb, City of Traders, the Factories, the Foundry Inspector, the thing that makes artifacts cost less, that's a thing. You can very easily get past the 6 mana cost, and this is a great way to sort of give the finger to the blue decks that love their Dak Fadens, they love their Jaces. You get to draw an additional card, which is something aggro decks are not really known for doing. They're known for getting their hands up very quickly and then essentially being in top deck mode. And so giving you 2 cards to work with when you have a lot of mana is a very, very good thing. Spells you cast, that reduces the cost of your other artifacts. And then having an Anthem to make all your artifacts bigger. This card is fantastic. There's a lot of discussion going on in the Mana Drain right now about how many copies of this the Shops deck should include, if this should even be a different variant of Shops, which is terrifying. Commander players are hype about this because, again, there's always that one person that loves their Planeswalkers, and not a lot of decks can deal with more than one Planeswalker at a time. This is a really great answer to a problematic type of card, and I'm really, really excited. Mud, the Legacy players, if you play Mud Cloud Coast, they also can make a dumb amount of mana with this. There's a possibility that Tron might even want this in Modern, and so I'm really excited. I think this is kind of scary.
and for those at home, note that it is Mishra's Workshop, not Mishra's Factory.
Thank you.
Sure. That makes the 3 mana. Just wanted to note that.
Dredge, just ignore the text. It's like, is that a cage? I don't care.
Right. Are you stopping me from? I don't care. Whatever. You do you. Graveyards. The Immortal Sun itself is, and this is, as I understand it from the Vorthos side, this is where Azor gave up his spark to make the Immortal Sun and trap everyone on the plane.
I'm going to try to do my best Ristic Studies impression here to explain what's going on with the Immortal Sun. If I'm wrong, I apologize, Vorthos people, but here we go. Okay, so this is as you can sort of see, if you like cross your eyes a little bit to look at the sailboat, like in Mallrats, this is sort of the Azorius symbol, otherwise known as the Azul symbol, who's one of the founders of the Azorius, and Azor, of course, being the Sphinx, who was a pre-mending planeswalker who created the Guild Pact, powerful enough to prevent even pre-mending planeswalkers to get to Ravnica. Azor left, that sort of shifted to Ixalan instead of Ravnica, and now we are able to visit Ravnica. Azor realized the power of something on Ixalan that we don't really know yet, but decided that Ixalan was worth turning into a jail cell that he himself would trap himself in, by removing the spark from Azor, allowing him to be printed as a creature as opposed to a planeswalker, and putting it inside of the Immortal Sun, which is inside of Orazca now, and is a incredibly powerful power source. Hopefully, I got some of that right. So, the ability to players can't activate planeswalkers' loyalty abilities, super flavorful for that reason.
Yeah.
The other 3. It just does everything. I mean, this card is insane. It does the stuff that you want to do with Staff of Nin. I mean, there was a period of time where Shops control kind of decks had Staff of Nin. Some of those decks want things like Caged Sun. But this does all of them. It makes your army bigger. It means your spells cost less, and you get more cards. In addition to shutting off a lot of the planeswalkers that see play in the older formats, things like Dak Fade and Jace the Mind Sculptor. In Standard, it's going to be able to shut down Angrath and whatever other big planeswalkers see play in the control decks. I think that the Immortal Sun is not only a necessary Vorthos piece, but a very exciting thing going forward for Constructed.
I mean, if you're going to take your spark and you want to remove it and you want to make something out of it, Immortal Sun's pretty good. I mean, that's where you're going to go. And note that he was a pre-mending planeswalker, which basically was a god. Like those, nothing ever happened to those things. I think my favorite story of the pre-mending walkers was Yawgmoth put a drill in Urza's head that nonstop cranked, so he could never keep a thought in his head because it couldn't kill him, but he could keep him confused. It was that's your pre-mending planeswalkers, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Yawgmoth was brutal.
He was pretty crazy.
That's insane.
But that means we get to turn the corner to number 1. Oh boy, Reuben, what's your number 1?
My number 1 has already given us so much to talk about on Magic Mics. It has already fueled more conversation about the future of constructed Magic. It has already given us so much joy and the opposite of joy because of its existence. We've talked about the best mythic in the set. We've talked about the best rare in the set. It's now time to talk about the best card in the set, which is an uncommon named Ravenous Chupacabra.
Wow.
You important piece of crap, Ravenous Chupacabra. It's perfect. So 2/2 for 2 colorless black. Beast Horror. When Ravenous Chupacabra enters the battlefield, destroy target creature and opponent controls. Again, earlier we were talking about, that's good clean living. There's no stipulations. This is when keeping it real goes wrong a little bit. I think that, this is going to be the card that has the biggest impact on Standard. Absolutely. I think that this card is going to be, first, it's a new toy for Marin in EDH. It's a new toy for the Scarab God to be able to mess around with. The fact that Sandstorm Strangler, which was like a Flametongue Kavu variant from Amonkhet, saw Fringe play with a worse ability for the same cost, means that this is going to be get out your bingo cards, ubiquitous. It's going to be everywhere immediately. All of the standard bans that just happened didn't really affect Scarab God decks, unless you count the 4-color energy decks that were splashing for the Scarab God. This allows those decks to really hyper-focus. God's Pharaoh's Gift decks are going to be using this thing. We're going to have Chupacabras killing opponents' Chupacabras, and Exalted 4/4 Chupacabras killing our opponents' 4/4 Chupacabras, etc., etc., etc. Ravenous Chupacabra is going to have the most impact on Standard going forward. It's going to have the most discussion about how game design works, with both Patrick's Chapin and Sullivan already weighing in on the impact of this card. When you're a better, arguably, Necatrol or Shriekmaw, both of which saw lots of Standard and even extended play, and cube play, this card is bananas, and it's way too good to be in a Magic the Gathering set, and I'm sad it exists, but it's my number 1.
It's my number 5.
Wow. I didn't, I didn't include it for a few reasons. One, I was positive Reuben's going to talk about it. Two, it's an important piece of crap. I hate this stupid card. I hate this card because when I first read it, it didn't really hit me. I mean, it hit me and I'm like, wow, this card's amazing and limited. It's a removal spell, whatever. That's fantastic. That's a good rate, blah, blah, blah. But as you start to see that the rate is so good, the ability is so powerful that it just always gives you value. Now the Scarab God can go get Terminate.
Murder.
Just straight murder.
This is straight murder, except for that the downside is that you have to pay an extra mana for a 2/2. And that you get to do combos with it, like God Pharaoh's Gift. Card is ridiculous. My real tragedy of Ravenous Chupacabra, and to a lesser extent the looming Chupacabra from the previous set, is that there isn't a single goat in all of Ixalan, and that's what Chupacabra means, is that they eat goats. But the good news is that Ravenous Chupacabra is the goat. It's the best thing in Standard.
Somebody on Reddit declared this card go for the goat.
Go for the goat.
Go for the throat.
Love it. Great. Perfect.
It's just
I'll allow it.
It's a stupid dog that shouldn't be as good as it is.
Yeah. Murder Puppy is going to be all over the place. Get ready for as many Ravenous Chupacabra tokens as Vampire tokens in Standard because of the Scarab God and God Pharaoh's Gift. It's ridiculous. It's way too good. It shouldn't exist. But you know what? It's going to be the thing that Rivals of Ixalan's remembered for.
This is a card where I could definitely see an article from R&D, and they're like, "We're sorry, we didn't know,
we didn't know what we was doing.
We did it for limited reasons. We did it because Black needed so and so, and oops, the format. This card just makes so many other cards suck. This card makes all the things that you get excited about. Oh man, I can't wait to play with Polly. Nope, dead. I can't wait to play with this big 8 mana, whatever. No, it's dead. I'm just gonna return this and it's dead. And I'm gonna kill your Chupacabra with my Chupacabra. That's gonna be an amazing game to play in Standard. It's just
this card could have said destroy target and then have the prefix non in front of all 4 of the creature types that are printed in Rivals of Ixalan. Destroy target non-vampire, non-merfolk, non-dinosaur, non-pirate.
Yep.
And it still would be the most played card in the set.
Like a Victim of Night,
Yeah, I mean, give it some sort of restriction. Give it some thing that doesn't just say this is the best removal on this
or make it a 5 mana
my issue. I mean, my issue.
Way too good.
My issue with it, like I mentioned on the show, is that it doesn't actually involve any of the tribes. You know, it's a beast horror. You know, why not make it? I got the idea of why not have one for the tribes? Like, why not have the pirate version that kills everything but a pirate, or have the merfolk version, or have it just sort of go after their antithesis? Like, have the merfolk one just kill vampires, have the vampire one just kill pirates. You know, some limitation on it that still ties it back to the tribes. The fact that it does all of this and doesn't help any of the tribes, essentially, like, why? Like, you want us to be emphasis was on getting us excited about pirates and dinosaurs, but this is none of them. Like,
yeah, the Brian Kibler quote that I saw was, "When everything kills everything, the only thing that matters is the rate."
Yeah,
and this card has the best rate available.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that it exists. It makes me sad. So, Aaron, what is your number one?
My number one is a very misunderstood card. I mentioned earlier in the show that sometimes I get tagged in things, or sometimes cards remind people of me. And this is a card that I think a lot of people felt bad for me when they first saw this card. They were like, "Oh, honey, we're so sorry." This was actually our preview card, and I remember after the card was leaked, a lot of people were like, "This is a troll. That has to be a joke. Like, are you okay?" And I was like, "I'm great. I actually want this card." My number one is Silent Gravestone. Silent Gravestone is one colorless. It's an artifact. Cards in graveyards can't be the targets of spells or abilities. We'll get there. 4 colorless and tap. You can exile it and all cards from all graveyards to draw a card. Now, why would I want this? So in a format like Legacy, for example, the graveyard hate is it does all the same thing. Surgical Extraction and Deathrite Shaman are the most popular forms of graveyard hate, and they both target your graveyard. No one's really running Rest in Peace. No one's really running Containment Priest. And so if all your graveyard hate operates in the same fashion, if you can shut that style of hate down, you're essentially free to do what you want to do. Ground Seal is a very popular card, but it costs 1 and a green. And 2 mana in Legacy, specifically mana of a certain color, is a lot to ask. And so to have something cost 1 that can be any color of mana is amazing. I've been doing some testing with this. I was fortunate enough to get 4 copies right out of the gate. Thanks, card order. And making Reanimator decks squirm. Turns off Animate Dead, turns off Reanimate. It has to be Exhume. And just watching a Reanimate deck discard the Reanimates because they can't do the thing. Watching an opponent, I had a guy the other day who tried to surgical me, and I went to cast this. He surgical like a land because he's like, I better get some value out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
And people just don't know what to do. And it's the same reason why Hollow One ended up being good in Vintage for a while, because the graveyard hate people were using wasn't good enough, or it didn't really exile your graveyard. You were still able to cast elf spells. The graveyard hate that people are using right now in Legacy just does one thing, and being able to flip that switch is everything. So unless the format adapts, this card is real, and I'm so happy it exists.
It's a real cool card. This card in particular is interesting because a friend of mine noted that, hey, the art, like, they really didn't like the art, and I was like, what's wrong with the art exactly? And they said, well, you see how everything has a black line around it, like particularly the center. If you look at the center, everything is sort of traced an outline around, and it's like you don't need to put an outline of everything. That's sort of very comic booky, sort of very almost like 7th edition-esque, where they had, again, lines around every little thing. It doesn't bother me that much, honestly. I thought it was fine, but like now that they mention that, I can't unsee it. I can't not see the black line around the thing and everything on the gravestone. The card itself, though, as we mentioned, was super cool, and I think in some ways was sort of like maybe a pseudo troll, but not in a bad way. You know, in good faith, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, where we can have fun with it and laugh at it, and maybe it's powerful enough to get there, and it sounds like it can make an impact, and that's great.
And it's also decent in standard against the Scarab God decks, because Scarab God targets. And so there are applications to this in other formats, and I think it's great.
Very nice. All right. Yeah. So for my number one, to close this out here, I decided to pick the card that I was most excited about. Ideally seen play. This card, if it works, is amazing. And I got to see it just a little bit, and it scared the living bejesus out of me, because the rate is amazing, the ability is ridiculous, and it takes one of the sort of classic abilities and kind of turns this on its head. Because Twilight Prophet is the most insane mythic vampire you've ever seen. Twilight Prophet is 2 black, 2 generic mana for a mythic vampire cleric that is a 2/4 flyer. So 4 mana for a 2/4 flyer. Okay. Has Ascend. Pretty sweet. Note that Ascend on permanence always checks all the time. It's a state-based ability. It just happens. Says, but this ability here, once you have the city's blessing, oh my god, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you got the blessing, reveal the top card of your library, and put it into your hand. Each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is that card's converted mana cost. It's basically a backwards demonic, or dark confidant, rather.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
It bobs wrong, as they say.
It bob upside down, but it's ridiculous because the rate on this card is nuts. The card itself is good. It's an evasive flyer, and that's great. But to be able to draw you cards, and not only just draw you cards, but put you back into the game because it's gaining you life, you're drawing extra cards, which is obviously fantastic. And it's in an amazing tribe.
Yeah.
And Chupacabra kills it.
Fair. I mean, Chupacabra kills everything. That's the to Doomblade argument. But Twilight Prophet's amazing. It has the Sorin Grim Nemesis minus ability every turn on a flyer with 4 toughness. The art is spectacular. You know, there are some people who say, you know, all Magic the Gathering art looks the same. Well, no. You show them Twilight Prophet, you show them what Seb McKinnon did with Twilight Prophet, and then you slap them on the wrist for that. This card's real good. I had this in a draft one time. It was nigh unbeatable. Obviously, vampires are probably the tribe that gets you the quickest to ascend. Each opponent losing life, meaning that you don't necessarily have to win inside of combat. When you hit the board with a Twilight Prophet, I think that this card is amazing. Another one of those mythics that's just I would immediately go all in on if I opened this in a pool. Absolutely fabulous card.
It's a GP playmat coming up too, and it's gorgeous.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, the art is just great. The styling of how the vampire is designed is super unique to anything I've seen, particularly in black cards, which tend to be either dark and dingy or very purple.
I was just about to say that we've seen that a lot with Ixalan, which is such a nice change of pace. You know, you don't normally see golds and yellows because that usually equals the sun. And I'm not clear on that, Vorthos. So are these guys able to be in the sun? Like,
they are. Vampires and Ixalan are able to be out in the sun.
Okay, and that's
the sun of Ixalan doesn't impact them the same way.
Okay, and that is such a refreshing take on this, to where they're still, I like that they're still scary, like they haven't been completely, you know, sanitized and twilighted, you know, where it's like there's sun there, but they're still scary. Like, that's an awesome balance to strike.
Right, and what I would note, to just bring it back around here, it's not that it dies to Doomblade, because Doomblade can't kill it. You know what can kill it? Ravenous Chupacabra can kill it for no good friggin' reason. It's like,
now I'm just imagining her like floating. She's all ethereal, like rah, rah, the dog comes out of nowhere and knocks her out of the air.
Yep. They both cost 2 colorless and 2 black. They both have 2 power. One of them kills the other one.
It just sucks because this is the exact type of card that I can't invest in because Ravenous Chupacabra is going to exist. And that, it just breaks my heart. It kills me. And for the next year and a half, 2 years, we're going to be stuck talking about how Ravenous Chupacabra is just better than every other thing you want to put mana into. Okay. But I love Twilight Prophet. At the end of the day, I think that card is sweet, and I'm totally okay with it being as sweet as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, that does wrap up our top 10 Rivals of Ixalan cards. Of course, you will see the top 10s from each of us on the screen right now. We want to hear from you about what card we didn't talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-hosts. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Reuben.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to move here to our final slide as soon as I can select it. Okay, great. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Reuben Bressler, you guys for watching, and hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Visit our website at MagicMikesPodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters, or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv/MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, on Reddit at Reddit.com/r/MagicMikes, on Facebook at Facebook.com/MagicMikes. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com, follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week for another top 10 episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.